You wake up and see this strange thing in the sky. What is it? It's a simple life, but little do you know that in a few minutes from then, you're going to fall through a black hole and emerge on the other side. You'll die when your oxygen runs low. It's a simple death. You wake up. What's that light up there? You could have a marshmallow right now. But in less than 1 hour, you'll find yourself in a place of tempest, bracing yourself against the elements. You'll die when a sudden wind propels you so high up that you almost leave the atmosphere. You wake up. Oh, did something just break up there? The air is so fresh out here when we're that close to the forest. Soon enough, you will die again. It will hurt. You wake up. Why do you remember waking up so many times? Why do you remember dying so many times? This is Outer Wilds, a fantastic game set in a very peculiar blend of science fiction world building. A world building that is designed to make you feel tiny in the vastness of space and time. Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Worldbuilding Tower, a series of videos in which I first introduce you to a spectacular piece of world building, and from that I extract an exercise that any creator can try at home. If you are a writer, a DM, a game designer, and you want to hone your world building skills, you can try that. And at the very end I present my own version of this exercise, not as the right answer or anything, just as one example out of infinite that could come from this exercise. For the longest time I wanted to talk about Outer Wilds because this world building is oh, it's so good! And if you folks like it, I can make more episodes about it, okay? But before we talk about this game, let's talk about creativity in general. Creativity is not the power to summon things from the ether. Creativity is merely the power to combine known things that you haven't seen combined before. There's a piece of data and a piece of data never seen together, boom. Something new. So when Tolkien grabbed his knowledge of linguistics and European folklore and the feelings he had experienced while fighting the war and put them together, he created something novel. And when that new thing becomes an old, established thing, then people can grab it and use it as a basis to create even more complex artifacts. Like George R.R. Martin grabbing the Lord of the Rings and combining it with many different references to create a Song of Ice and Fire. Again, something novel. And many times those combinations will happen because there's a strong theme there that attracts a lot of creators and audiences. And if enough pieces of art are created with that theme in mind, it ends up establishing itself as a trope. Tropes are great. They point audiences to the emotional reactions they know they enjoy, and they give creators a sort of a mold that they can expand in their own unique ways. When done correctly, everybody's happy. But when this is done incorrectly, and many times this happens because big corporations force artists to do things that are not artistic, Hasbro, then creators will not follow that trope as a guideline, but instead as a manual, as a step-by-step guide that should be followed very strictly. So many amazing, interesting tropes have heaps of bad art associated with them. Works that feel more like poor copies of somebody else's work. I'm not saying that innovation is necessary though. If you write a great story that doesn't introduce anything new, that's fine. As long as the characters are lovable, the world makes sense, and it provokes the kind of feeling that the readers are looking for, then by all means, use all the cliches. For example, I love Firefly. I love Firefly with a passion. But there's nothing there that Cowboy Bebop hadn't done 10 years prior. And they're both great. If you tell me you prefer Firefly than Cowboy Bebop, I don't think you're crazy. But even if novelty is not necessary, there is a particular kind of bliss that only comes when you meet the new, the mystery, the light fantastic. So it's a joy when you see a very common theme explored in a completely new light. Let's talk about Outer Wilds. This is a game around space exploration, and space exploration has been done over and over and over and over again. Yeah, the final frontier, and a gigantic turtle swimming through a sea of stars. Upsilon dies backwards, and no one comes to visit. There's even a subgenre called space opera, and if this trope is popular enough to name a genre, then you know there's a tremendous amount of repertoire on the subject. And Outer Wilds, of course, is part of this repertoire. But with an asterisk. The creative team behind this game grabbed this whole culture and language around space exploration, and on top of it they applied this texture, this aesthetic that we all know, but we've never seen apply to space exploration before. They coated this space exploration with a southern United States rural aesthetic. Sort of a cute hillbilly countryfolk vibe. Your ship is made mostly of wood, like a log cabin in the format of a spaceship. And if you look inside of it, it's kind of messy. It kind of looks like a work shed behind somebody's house. When you're out and about, you're looking for particular signals to find some people who are lost in space. Those signals are banjo tunes and harmonica sounds. There's a bunch of expectations and emotions around this particular aesthetic. For example, the praise of a simple life, or living next to nature. And this aesthetic, that it's so small and local, combined with the theme of space, generates some interesting, complex feelings. You're not using some advanced technology incomprehensible for our minds to explore this galaxy. You're using whatever you had in your backyard. Space is vast, and you're tiny. Both the big trope and the small aesthetic point you to the same direction, but from different angles. In this case, and in the service of provoking those particular emotions, they're both greater than the sum of their parts. And this, because it's so well applied, elevates Outer Wilds' world building from good to exceptional. And most definitely worthy of a world building exercise. Today we're gonna combine things that are not usually combined, as you probably expected after this whole explanation. But here's the true challenge. Before we choose what we're going to combine, we must reflect upon the cultural background of those elements, and particularly what sort of feeling we think we might evoke by stitching together A and B. Okay? The first element we need is a big trope. A trope that you've seen many times, both well and not well applied. If you're still confused about what constitutes a trope, I'm gonna link a Merphy Napier video here on the card and also in the description below. She not only defines tropes better than I did here, but also she invites us to think about tropes in a way that I find very positive and very creatively instigating. Now that you got it, just like in Outer Wilds, we're gonna cover it with a texture. We're gonna dress this trope with an aesthetic that's not usually there, but all in service of a higher emotional goal. How does this interaction work? And what sort of feelings and expectations do you feel you can highlight by combining those two elements? Now let's go for the last part of the video, which is my take on this exercise. Not better, not worse than anybody else's, just one example. And if you want to share your version of the exercise, I would invite you to do so in the YouTube comments. There's already a great exchange happening over there. Amazing world builders sharing incredible ideas. I am loving this so much, and I encourage you to join our ranks. Okay, let's do the exercise. The trope I'm choosing today is the Ronin, the wandering warrior, the masterless samurai. Being a samurai was not exactly a job in feudal Japan, it was more being part of a social class. So when Japan's military and police started to modernize both in strategy but also in technology, with rifles that could easily destroy a battalion of samurai, suddenly you had this whole bunch of people who were kind of noble class people who were not wanted anymore, but also unemployable, because these people didn't know anything but the way of the sword. So some of them started to roam the country, and they became the Ronin. It's true that some of them were nothing more than petty thieves, surviving as they could in the new times, but others, the ones that retained that sense of nobility of the samurai, started to look for enlightenment and self-improvement. They carried this stoic culture of the samurai, and they knew they were a dying breed. With my exercise here, I wanted to lessen this violent aspect of the Ronin and increase this more interesting, in my opinion, Buddhist, dedicated, craftsman, disciplined side of them. So I chose an aesthetic that is going to help me do just so. I am going to combine the trope of the Ronin with the aesthetic of ornamental gardening. Yeah, that's a trip. Let's go for it. After the industrialization of gardening, many former bushmasters roam the country. When you see one in the distance entering your lands, you're never sure. Did they come to ruin all of my plants in their wrath against the current gardening world? Or did they find something new, something powerful in their travels? Something that can elevate my garden to a whole new level. A beauty beyond measure, a sincerity with each slash of the pruning shear. Oh, wandering master, the trees need trimming. The seeds need watering. Tell me, what are the intricate truths you have found while meditating under the gardens of a changing world? Yeah, that's a trip. And that's where I leave you for today. As always, thank you so much for my patrons for supporting this small channel. It's so amazing that I have patrons to begin with. This is so cool of you. Thank you. And with that, I'll leave you. Goodbye. See you next time.